Good morning, everybody.
When I wake in the morning, keep my mind on Jesus. When I wake in the morning, keep my mind on Jesus. When I wake in the morning, keep my mind on Jesus. When I wake in the morning, keep my mind on Jesus.
Let's sing that again.
Wake in the morning, keep my mind on Jesus. When I wake in the morning, keep my mind on Jesus. When I wake in the morning, keep my mind on Jesus. When I wake in the morning, keep my mind on Jesus.
So when we pray that we want to keep our mind on Jesus, I think a common thing that might come to our imagination is something that's very like escapist. Like we're keeping our mind on Jesus so that we can escape all of the troubles of our world or the troubles of our lives. And I want to press us not to try to keep that in our imagination when we pray we're keeping our mind on Jesus. So keeping our mind on Jesus, the God that Jesus shows us, is not escaping from the troubles or the sufferings or the hardships or the stresses in our lives. God of Jesus is a God who can empathize with those things. The God that Jesus shows us is a suffering God, a God who knows what it is like to experience betrayal, hurt, death, pain, all of the worst things. And so when we sing, especially a song like this, which comes from the African American tradition, a tradition deeply acquainted with grief and suffering and pain and death and unfairness and senseless pain, we are praying that God would help us to not run away from those things and not believe that escaping those things is the best life. The best life is finding God in the midst of those things, because those things are going to come. Every single one of you on this call, as if I can peruse your names and I spend time with you for very long, are going to tell me about something that hurts, or something that sucks, or something that's unfair. And we do not have a God who calls us to escape those things. We have a God who is with us in those things, that knows what that's like. So when we're keeping our mind on Jesus, that's what we're praying. We're praying for help. The superpower of empathy is what God offers us, not escapism, because that escapism just lies to us. We think we can escape our problems for 1 minute, but then the next day they come back. So we are praying to a God who doesn't lie to us, but who's with us. We're gonna sing this one more time, and we'll try the other verses too together.
When I wake in the morning, keep my mind on Jesus. When I wake in the morning, keep my mind on Jesus. And when I'm walking and talking, keep my mind on Jesus. When I'm walking and talking, keep my mind on Jesus. Oh, 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 oh.
Laying my head down.
When I'm laying my head down, keep my mind on Jesus. When I'm laying my head down, keep my mind on Jesus. When I'm laying my head down, keep my mind on Jesus. When I'm laying my head down, keep my mind on Jesus. When I wake in the morning, keep my mind on Jesus. When I wake in the morning, Keep my mind on Jesus when I wake in the morning. Keep my mind on Jesus when I wake in the morning. Keep my mind on Jesus. Lord, I don't want to rush on ahead in my own strength when you're right here. Lord, I don't want to rush on ahead in my own strength when you're right here. I'm not in a hurry when it comes to your spirit, when it comes to your presence, when it comes to your voice. I'm learning to listen just to rest in your nearness. I'm starting to notice you are speaking. Lord, I wanna love like you. I wanna feel what you feel. I wanna see what you see. Lord, I wanna love like you. I wanna feel what you feel. I wanna see what you see. And I'm not in a hurry when it comes to your spirit, when it comes to your presence, when it comes to your voice. I'm learning to listen just to rest in your nearness. I'm starting to notice you are speaking. Open my eyes, I wanna see you. Open my ears, I want to hear you speak. Tell me your thoughts, what's on your mind. I'll be a friend, I wanna see through your eyes. I wanna see through your eyes. not lost, is not lost. All is not lost, is not lost. All is not lost, is not lost. All is not lost, is not lost. The pain of life, I know it well, it knows me well. The road to peace, I know, is hell, I know it well. All is not lost, is not lost. 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 May the seeds of peace be scattered, birthing trees whose shade gives us rest. May the seeds of peace be scattered, birthing trees whose shade gives us rest. The seeds of peace be scattered, birthing trees whose shade gives us rest. The seeds of peace be scattered, birthing trees whose shade gives us rest. How can we name love that wakens heart and mind, indwelling all we know or see, or do or seek or find, in every human face, every human face. Love's echo sound, and God is found in the common grace. If we awoke to life, built on a rock of care, that asks no great reward but firm, assured simply there. We can with parents' names describe and thus adore love unconfined, a father kind, a mother strong and sure. La, 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 So in 100 names, each day we all can meet, a presence sensed and shown at work, at home or in the street. Yet every name we see shines in a brighter sun. In Christ alone is love full grown, and life and hope begun. Christ alone is love full grown, and life and hope begun. In Christ alone is love full grown, and life and hope begun.
Amen. Good morning, everyone. Happy to be here with all of you. So this last week, I felt the most anxious I've felt in a while. Work was quite testing, and it seemed like I was dealing with people taking out their anxieties on me. And I don't know about you, but for me, it's hard not to let myself carry those anxieties as well. And the body has a way of carrying that anxiety, whether it's tension in the neck, headaches, migraines, feeling stiff, and even feeling physically ill. With all of that, it just makes it hard to navigate through the day. And what I have found extremely helpful when I'm experiencing this type of anxiety is this meditation exercise that my therapist does with me all the time. And I have found it to feel, it just helps release that anxiety and or any distress you're experiencing. And so if you feel comfortable, I would love to introduce this meditation exercise as a form of prayer this morning. So if you don't mind, we'll start by closing our eyes. And we're going to take a couple of deep breaths. Take one deep breath in, out. In, out. So using the visual power of your imagination can be remarkably healing, especially to clear out some of the body level distress or comfort that you may have identified. What may you be noticing now in your body? Even if you're not experiencing anything unpleasant now, where do you typically experience distress or discomfort in your body? Imagine that a bright and healing light is forming overhead. You can imagine the light coming from a spiritual source, Jesus, God. The light can be whatever color you want it to be. Whatever you associate with healing, happiness, goodness, or any other positive quality. If you don't like the idea of a light, you can think of it simply as a color or an essence. And the lighter essence can enter anywhere in the body. For instance, if your chest anxiety is very high, it may feel more appropriate to have the light enter there. Or it can come from the ground, from the earth, through your feet. And if the light stream image is hard to keep in focus, add another sensory element to enhance the focus, like a smell or simple sound or music. So imagine that a bright and healing light is forming overhead. Take a deep breath. What are you noticing now? Now, think about this light beginning to move through your body or over your body like a shield or a force shield. From the top of your head or whatever area you're feeling most anxious, or the bottom of your feet, moving inch by inch slowly until it reaches either the bottom of your feet or top of your head. Take a deep breath in. Take one out. What are you noticing now? Spend a few moments just noticing the presence of this light or essence in your body. Continue to imagine the light source and any other qualities besides color, like a texture or sound. Draw your attention back to where you first may have noticed or described distress at the body level. What's happened to it? If the distress is still there on some level in the body, think about deepening your breath so it makes the light or essence more brilliant and intense. So brilliant and intense that the distress dissolves into it. We'll just take a few more moments to take deep breaths in and out. Jesus, whatever stressors we're experiencing today or we've experienced this week, I just pray that as I guided meditation, may you be the light that just courses through all those areas of our life and dissolve those anxieties, the pain. God, help carry us through yet another day, another week with you by our side. And if we're experiencing feeling alone in these distressors, God, I just pray that you bring something to us, someone to us, to make us feel less alone. And may your presence be with us. Amen. And if we had
Amen.
more time, we would obviously continue this and go through it a little longer. But for the sake of time, this was a very short guided meditation. But thank you so much for joining me.
Elizabeth, thank you. What a gift to be guided in that way. And we'll look forward to making more time so you can lead us in the extended experience. That was really good for me. And we do hope that wherever it is you're joining from, that this prayer and this time to be in song together was really good for you, and calming and peace-bringing and life-bringing this morning. It is so good to get to do practices like this together. It's one thing to do so with apps of people with wonderful British accents leading us, but it's another to be led by people in our own community, and that's special and brings a liveliness to it. I especially needed that this morning. As many of you know, I'm Vince Brackett. I'm one of the pastors here, and thank you to everyone for your care and concern for the Brackett family this week. After our kids and my wife were in an accident on Friday, and everybody is okay, and we're fine. But there was a great deal of our community coming around to be there for us, and many expressed their concern and were able to help us out in a moment of sudden need. So I'm grateful for this community today. I'm grateful for all of you who are here. And I want to give some quick shout outs for today's service to Elizabeth for leading us in prayer. That was so wonderful. To Erin Loescher, who is running our visuals today so that we can follow along, and she'll be helping us before we're done this morning. Thank you, Erin. And as we move in today, I just want to say a special hello to anyone who is new or newer with us as you're joining this morning. A special hello to you. I hope that I get the chance to meet you if we've not had that chance yet. Brownline Church is both a local and an online community. We're based in Chicago, but we draw many from well beyond Chicago every Sunday. And we started this church to help people find spiritual health and depth, particularly people who live in and feel more comfortable in progressive settings rather than in traditionally religious settings. Our guide here is Jesus. There are religious settings that present faith in Jesus as something that's pretty exclusive, that you're either going to be inside of and in the club, or outside of and frankly going to hell. And that's just never been our experience of Jesus. For us, Jesus has always led us into a more inclusive, a more open, and a more compassionate way of life. And so we do hope that you get a taste of that while you're with us today. Today, as we're meeting once again online, is going to be a slightly different service than normal. And so we'll ask for you to roll with us if this is if you're joining us for like the first or second or third time. We do think you might get something out of this, because today we're going to be doing something that we set aside. We paused our sort of normally scheduled programming of spiritual direction or talking about following Jesus in the 21st century. We paused things last year about this time to do some family conversations as a community, as a church, as people who are invested in the lives of each other and in the lives of this big thing that we're all connected to, Brownline Church. And today we're going to do that again. We like the idea of taking this kind of like end of August, sort of the turn of the fall, beginning of the school year, to have some family conversations. And it was really, really beneficial last year. If you were with us, or if you've heard us mention this over the course of the last year, out of last year's family conversations was birthed a 5-year plan for our church. And so we're now a year into that 5-year plan. And so that's going to come up today in our conversations. But as we get going, we had a few different things that we're going to go in. So let me invite in my co-pastor, who you will all know, Kyle Hanawalt. Hello, Kyle.
Hey, Vince.
Good to see you. And so we've got some general beats that we want to hit. And and we're going to take those in turn and kind of talk them out and back and forth, just kind of seeing as things go. But we also want to take this as a chance for sort of Q&A style. So at any point, if you want elaboration on something, or if you have a specific question on something, you're like, hey, can you talk more about that? Or, hey, you didn't bring up this, but I want to hear about this. Please use the chat in Zoom. We want you to do that. We want you to throw those questions in there. We're going to be looking at those to make sure that we don't miss anything. And we're going to speak to everything that we possibly can as best we can. And if you are joining right now on Facebook, you can load up the Discord app if you want to make a comment or ask a question. If you're joining on YouTube, if you just put a chat in YouTube, I believe that we'll be able to see it in Discord. So YouTube, you can just write it in. Facebook, we'd love for you to open up Discord to ask a question. If you're joining in Zoom, you can just put it right here in the Zoom chat, and we'll see it that way. So Kyle, I think we can just start with some general comments. The first kind of general question that we brought up today is, what's the latest plans and thoughts on in-person community and pandemic life? What are the latest thoughts and plans? Kyle, what comes to you for that? And then I can comment as well.
Exactly. And I think as we step into this fall, I think we are all kind of in the reality that this world is not where we maybe would have hoped it to be come September, in terms of fully being able to integrate back into life in a way that we perhaps we're hoping to be true. And I think as we think about what we are doing as a church, I think we're sitting with that awareness, simultaneously the awareness of rising COVID numbers and the realities of the extra precautions around the Delta variant, but also sitting in the awareness as a community of what that emotional experience is for all of us as well. So there's a practical element for us of trying to think about what is the right decision for how frequently we have hybrid services with an in-person option. And what does it look like as I'm thinking about kids' church at this point? What does it mean to have kids supports with unvaccinated children, and trying to think through that whole process? So there's a lot of questions at that, but then we're also holding in that, I think, this emotional tension that we're all feeling right now, of just burnout and fatigue of doing this over the next season. And so part of the questions we're asking as well is how we as a church think through in-person availability and community in light of the emotional realities that we're all walking in right now as well.
Yeah. So, as if we can get as brass tacks as we can, given that everything is still just like, are we asking the right questions? Not do we have the right answers? With the uncertainty, the one thing that I think that we have arrived at as a pastoral staff, Haley and Kyle and I talking, is that we're going to continue meeting once a month right now in a hybrid way. We had danced around the idea over the summer, it's sort of in our naive pre-Delta variant days, about the idea of starting to go weekly on September 12th, which is our next hybrid service that we have on the calendar. We'd put a date on for June, for July, for August, and for September. And that was really exciting to us to try to build to that. And it does feel to us that the safest and wisest thing to do at this point is still just to meet monthly for now. The monthly services that have been at the Davis have been really great, and if you've joined us, we've tried to ask people for their feedback, both people who have been joining online those Sundays, because we've been mindful of the fact that we don't want to lose the intimacy that we've all felt, because now we're going to have two different ways of joining. There are some people who are joining online, some people who are there in the room. And it's been wonderful to hear that we haven't had, at least for people's experience so far, we haven't had a loss of intimacy. And those who have joined in person have had a really good experience. It's felt safe in terms of all of the COVID restrictions and how we're trying to lay out that space. It's also felt really, special and taking down some of that like social isolation, which has been the thing that has been really, really difficult for us to battle when church has been online for so long. So given that we've had this good experience so far with going monthly, we're going to continue that for the time being. And what we've talked about doing is just continuing this idea of each in sort of the week leading up to each of these hybrid services. We will continue to survey the community. So if you are on our mailing list, our email list, then you will, and you're local to us, you will have received our surveys that go out in weeks leading up to a hybrid service. If you've not received one of those before, I'm going to throw here on the screen a little QR code, and you can follow this QR code to get on our mailing list, our email list. And you just let us know that you're local, that you're joining in Chicago, so that you can participate in those surveys. These are really important to us because, like Kyle said, a lot of what we're doing right now is not just trying to figure out like what is the safest in general. We're trying to figure out what is the safest in terms of how our community is interacting with what's going on. What is the safest thing to do given the different places that we're coming from, given the different comfort levels that we all have. And we want to be able to take those things and honor each of those perspectives as we make a choice that's best for our church at large. And that means that we need to hear your voices. And so we would love for you to be participating in that if you're a local person. Each survey, we've gotten a big response. So this is not to say that like we're not getting enough information, but just to say we're going to continue to do that because things continue to change. It seems like each month we have different uncertainties that we're all balancing. We have different information coming from the CDC or from those that are trustworthy out there. And so we're just trying to figure out, month by month, what is the best thing to do. So we'll put some dates on the calendar for, I think, October, November, December, and that will put us through the fall in terms of hybrid services. And that will also kind of put us in the mode of, if you can believe we're almost there, thinking about Advent and Christmas as a community. But that's what we're going to look at going forward. And that means that the bummer is that we are not going to be meeting weekly starting on September 12th, as we'd hoped to be doing so in a hybrid capacity. Kyle, what else can you speak to on that? And then also, we especially want to bring you in terms of the kids conversation, because that's such a different thing, given that we don't have vaccinations in that situation. So what can you speak to, Kyle?
Yeah, so I mean, these things are interwoven. It's hard to have a weekly in-person service without being able to offer an option for families, and that is probably one of the most complex pieces of how we do in person. And so, at this point, with schools opening up, we're giving some time and space for families to adjust into that, and then have further conversation after we've seen what does it look like to have unvaccinated kids in a physical space. In the context of the Delta variant. And then I think those two things are going to inform each other, because it is going to, like I said, to do a weekly service and the work required for a weekly service and not be able to offer an in-person kids option is a really tough position as a community to try to do. So these things are interwoven. And so if you are a family and you're trying to think these things, we were going to actually have a conversation today around that, but it just felt like we had so many unanswered questions for families, and families were already wrestling with so many of the transitions back to school that we're going to be looping back in a little bit about that, to have those conversations about what we need to be in place. And the reason we are taking this a month at a time right now is because it's nearly impossible to have a conversation about any reality further than a month from now. So
right.
We really will be taking it. Maybe the world shifts and the pediatric vaccine comes out sooner, and maybe Delta variant shifts faster, or maybe the transmission rate in Illinois and the Chicagoland area takes a significant dip, and then we can have a conversation based off of that. Right now, we felt like this is the conversation we needed to have and address, given the data of what we had on hand right now. So if you are a parent and you're thinking about these things, just continue thinking about them, and we're giving a little space for this fall transition to happen before. And I think honestly, what we want to hear, if you want to pay attention, is what are you seeing and experiencing in that school experience, and how do we think about what that means for us in terms of what we can pull off at the Davis Theater in a way that's supporting children. So I think that's what the extra piece I would add in.
Yeah, especially for our local Chicago families, we recognize the cost of what we've been able to pull off. That it's very difficult to try to show up to our Sunday services with your kids, and there actually being no support beyond just what you're trying to do yourself for participating in our services, especially as a sort of heartbeat experience for our church is experiences like Elizabeth just led us in this morning. And that can be really difficult to do. It can be difficult to do in person. It can be difficult to do when you are joining our services from afar in your living room, when kids are around as well. And so we are mindful of the fact. I mean, Kyle and our parents too, Haley as well, with a just now 1-year-old, and so we are definitely cognizant of the fact that this is not ideal, and we want to work together to figure out what is the next step that we can get to, in particular for parents that are connected with our church in person, obviously, because we're talking about that, but also online, and how what things can we recommend, and what things can we do, and how can we structure our spaces when we're gathering together to provide for families to have that experience of quiet and meditation, parents to have that as well, when so much of your attention has to be split on a Sunday morning right now.
And the last piece I would talk just touch on as well is we're talking about our Sunday service spaces, and I think that's for some that this experience might asking the question of not being in person every week. There's a sense of longing for more in-person connection, and that's the conversation that's not a this is not a binary conversation of either we meet on Sundays in person or we're not creating space for people to try to connect in person. That there's other opportunities for us to talk about small groups, other opportunities to talk about, even in the Sunday spaces where people can still get some in-person connection. It's just whether in the context of a large in-person service, that is actually where that should happen. And so part of our feedback and conversation will be continuing to talk to people about how we're connecting each other in other spaces other than just the large group Sunday morning experience.
Yeah, that's a really good one to point to, Kyle. Is the there are lots of things in between meeting online and meeting in person, right? And so we want to dive into those, especially for those of us for whom it's been really important to have those hybrid service experiences, and it comes as a difficult message when you hear us say we're not going weekly September 12th as we hoped that we would be. So we want to work with you. If that does hit you poorly, we understand, and we want to find ways to figure out how we can have in-person gatherings. One of the things that we've been talking about as we move into September is that we're going to be spending a lot of our Sundays together highlighting the different small group opportunities that are available. Some of them are online and some of them are in person, and that is something that we can definitely talk about, how to make sure that as a community, one of the things we want to be able to do is battle social isolation and COVID-19 times or otherwise, and so there are ways that we can do that are beyond just the in-person service on Sundays. So yeah, I appreciate a comment in the chat right now of just saying, yeah, like that I'm one of those people that hits poorly. I understand, but we can find ways to continue to have in-person community that are not just the Sunday morning service. So again, I'll just throw out, please drop your questions, drop your comments, drop what you want to hear us talk more about. This is the most kind of brass tacks thing there is right now of just when are we actually meeting? When are we not actually meeting? What are the, what's the details? But as we go forward, we can return to that, or we can continue on in kind of larger picture conversations. The second thing, Kyle, that we brought up to discuss today is what's the status of our 5-year plan. Now, a year in to that 5-year plan, and maybe before we respond to that, Aaron, if I can ask you to put our slides up here for the 5-year plan. We last year, if you were with us, we kind of walked through a few different parts to this. So we had one, our the our vision, and what we were talking about was a number of things. So I'll just kind of read it as you're looking at it here. We want a caring and supportive local and online community. That's what we are shooting for. We are shooting for a Sunday service space of 100 plus adults that are connected with us, and so we're kind of seeing the scope of who we're connecting with increasing. We have talked about hiring a woman or a person of color or both on pastoral permanent staff. We've talked about having diverse voices on Sundays every month. We talked about an age-separated kids and youth Sunday program. We talked about being engaged in activism, known for that. We talked about connecting to larger church and faith networks that are not exclusively white-led, especially as part of the story of our church just prior to the pandemic changing everything, was leaving our affiliation with Vineyard USA churches. And so where do we land in terms of what are the larger networks that we're connected with? We want to be connected with networks that are not exclusively white-led. And then finally, increasing this idea of something that's been core to our church from the beginning, of a reputation as the inclusive and progressive church on the north side of Chicago, known for spiritual growth and known for a healthy sense of humor and humility. So this is the idea that in 5 years, what we want to be able to do is see all of these things a reality. And I think that's very doable. I think we have already seen some progress on a lot of this. Maybe we'll pause there. If I can just kind of, Kyle, like if we can speak to some of these things, what is the status of longing for these sorts of things to be true of our church 4 years from now? And I can also speak to that. And then again, I'll encourage you, use the chat if there's something specific that you want us to speak to.
Yeah, I think it's crazy that it's already been a year into this process, and it's really important to us. This, in many ways, was born out of, I think, last summer, our desire as a church to get clearer on who we are and who we want to be.
Yeah.
This was in light of leaving our former denominational affiliation so that we could be more openly and explicitly LGBTQ plus inclusive. This was in light of understanding how we want to stand as a church in light of all that happened last summer, from the murder of George Floyd, and all of the conversations that were being had about not a new issue, and us being a church saying, who do we really want to be in this space, and acknowledging some of the unique realities of a church that had been led by two white men, and realizing some of the ways that if we were not intentional, all of our best care in the world was not going to make up for the real intentionality of walking through a community effort of trying to navigate the blind spots and the biases and the ways that that's missed. And when I look back on it, I think it's really important that we do this a year in, because it's really easy for 5-year plans for them just to kind of be a thing you launch in year one, and it kind of just fades into the background. And I think that part of what this one was some real commitments from us of like who we want to be. And part of bringing this up right now is not just saying, hey, what's our progress? It's also inviting accountability. It's also inviting a partnership between everyone in this church to say, is this something that we're all pushing towards? And when I look at that list, I see lots of things that I feel very very proud and very hopeful and grateful that I do think that we've made progress. Almost shockingly, our church has grown since the beginning of 2020, which is kind of a crazy like pre-pandemic days, which is like that's an exciting piece for us to think about. What does that mean even in the context of this world where most churches are rapidly losing attendance and giving? I think about some of our steps forward in real intentionality to make sure that we are inviting voices to be part of this conversation every week and every month that are not just Vince and me, or even largely moving away from this idea that you have this single voice that is speaking on any given Sunday. So I look at a lot of those things. I think very much we have really stepped into being a unique place of what does it mean to be a church where people that live and exist in progressive settings and feel comfortable in those are really feeling welcomed and alive. And I think in the last year that space has felt even more necessary for me, just to feel like I can be honest and engaged. So obviously there's things that jump out are not true. Like we're year one in, and very grateful that we have Haley as part of us through her pastoral internship for a finite amount of time has been able to be on our staff. But that is not something that's financially, like we don't have financially built in the ability to have a permanent, to have somebody on staff in a paid role that can be there long term. So that's something that I see, like we need to grow as a church financially for that to be true. And so I see little pieces in this as well where I'm, you're in theory, we're 20% towards the goal, which doesn't necessarily mean every single one of those goals is at 20% progress. Perhaps some of those goals may be at 0% progress until the time it becomes 100% true. And so that's some of my initial feelings and thoughts as I look at all this stuff.
Yeah, I think that probably the thing that I would point to in terms of like holistically that vision. So we had a lot of bullet points there of just like we're dreaming about this, we're dreaming about this, we're dreaming about this for the future. I think the number one thing that I can point to in terms of progress, in terms of have we made headway, is and I can do this because she doesn't happen to be here this week. She'll be watching and listening to this after the fact. Is Haley Larson being our pastoral intern? I mean the experience of having we've not had a woman on pastoral staff since the beginning of this church, and what the game-changing experience, I think, for the spiritual direction that our church is able to offer, for pastoral care that our church is able to offer, and just for the overall effect on the voice of this community and what we speak to, what we anticipate, how we say those things, the countless conversations that go on behind closed doors when just Kyle and Haley and I are meeting, and things come out better from the church in general because Haley had a hand on them too, and not just the two of us who have tried for many years to say things in the right ways. But like we have limited people and we have limited perspectives, and it's been hugely beneficial to have her a part of this for the last 9 months. I mean, that has been a gift to this community. And I think what it allows us to do right now in terms of moving toward this dream of 5 years from now, having somebody on permanent pastoral staff who like Haley, is that we've now gotten a picture, and now it's like, oh man, like now we know what we could experience, and what if we can offer a full-time with benefits position so that can become a permanent reality for us. Like, oh my, like now we've got something that's grabbed us and that's hooked us, and we can strive for that. And that's a little bit of what's been behind this idea that if we break down the financial need, the financial burden it would take to get to that point, to have a third pastor on staff that's a woman or person of color permanently, and have full benefits and all of the, we're not just offering like frankly a crap job that somebody's like scraping by just to live in the city of Chicago where cost of living is high, but we're offering something really powerful and good, and and can take care of somebody and a family. If we want that, we've got to raise about $18,000 a month as a church. That's roughly where we need to be. And right now we raise about $9,000 to $10,000 a month. And so we know what we have to get to. And if we break that down over the course of the 4 years that we have left of this 5-year plan, all we have to do is raise like $2,000 a year more in our monthly. So it's just incremental raises to what we take in monthly. We can do that. $2,000 split over there's 80 adults that are connected to our community. $2,000 over the broken down into 80 parts, that's not very much, right? Like we can totally make that happen, and each year just get a little bit further closer to that goal. And then 5 years from now, this is absolutely a reality. And that so that excites me in terms of like what progress are we making. Kyle, please.
Well,
there were two questions in the chat. So
yeah, that's
is that where you're going?
Yeah, it was exactly.
Great.
The first question I see from Jen is, what are the conditions that would make us consider going weekly? And I really see there's 4 things, and some of them we have no control over and some we do. The first would be what's the transmission rate in our area. So right now we are in an area of high transmission. It is red, and what that means in terms of our CDC recommendations, that's one piece, which is frankly that COVID variant or whatever is at a lower rate in our area. Secondarily is when a pediatric vaccine comes out, so that we can actually welcome in our families in a way that children are able to be vaccinated if they want to be able to do that. The third thing that I would say is having a way that you can help us do it is getting feedback from people on their own comfort levels, continuing to understand
The surveys,
the surveys of where everybody is. And then lastly is helping us continue taking step forward in some of the logistic asks in terms of how many people are comfortable being in person every single week versus the number of roles and responsibilities that need to be covered every single week to be in person. So one way you can help is if you are somebody who does want to be in person and support is being willing to volunteer to make that happen. Because right now, because of the pool of people who are comfortable, there's just less people to do that. And which is connected to another conversation around what for people of what's right for people. So those four things I would say are four significant factors in trying to decide when we're back in person. I don't know, Vince, if there's more you'd say there.
Yeah, that seems right to me. I like that fourfold. That seems like it's captured all that we've talked about.
And in terms of the things we are still moving forward in, when I look at that list, I think each one of those has an area of progress that we need to work. Vince talked a lot about what does it mean to actually bring somebody on the staff. I think for us we're currently have 80 adults part of our church. To get to the place where we have 100 adults on average a Sunday means that we probably have close to 150 adults connected with our church, which is I think part of just the process of us being a community that is known and seen and understood, and finding more and more people that feel connected to us. The one piece on all of those that I feel a lot of I think we as a community need to make sure we're working together well forward is the activism and partnership piece. I think having people in our community who are actively engaged in work that is addressing justice issues, I think for us to be able to step in and partner with that. I think that there was a lot of energy and momentum in our world last year that is, I think the question is, can we as a community keep sustaining that? And given the conversations that are pivoting away from our whole country having those conversations on a weekly basis. And for us, that commitment has not wavered. But in order for us as a community to keep engaging in good activism, us in a community engage in good partnerships, we need the people in our community to keep bringing us into those. That Vince and I have our own bandwidth and resources, but ultimately we found the most fruitful activism, the most fruitful partnerships is when people in our community are already engaged in those and then are inviting us to be partners in that.
Yeah, definitely. I agree. I think that it's both the engaged in activism piece in that 5-year plan, I think is both something that I would point to as what do we want to move forward on in the spirit of Brittany's question. And it also falls into that category of I think another place where we've really made progress. I think that we have been able to see, in particular, I think the area that Brown Line has been able to be involved with is reimagining public safety in Chicago, beyond policing. And that's a conversation that many are increasing involvement in, and especially right now. We're in a budget cycle or budget negotiations right now as a city, and so there's a great deal of increased interest in this, especially since the murder of George Floyd. And that has been something that we've been able to get involved in terms of putting our money where our mouth is, using our neighboring fund. That's been some of the things that we've been able to contribute to, is events that are trying to get help raise awareness for reimagining public safety beyond just policing. We have been able to we have a number of a handful of people who are actually heavily involved in campaigns around that. And it just allowing our church to be something that when you become involved in something that aligns with the values that we speak of here in terms of justice, in terms of the communal care for one another, that being a place that isn't just focused on relationships because we all live in the same capitalistic world, but relationships that actually I want to see you thrive, and I believe that my well-being is caught up with your well-being. When we see people get involved in whether it's public policy pushing or whether it's protest or whatever it is, that connects with that, and they bring that back to us as hey, you're a community that supports me. You can support me by raising the banner for this, like that's something you can do. That's something that I think we've seen happen a little bit more because we've been talking about that more, and we've been making space for that more, and we've been looking around and seeing who's involved, who's who is passionate about X, Y, or Z thing, and how can we give them a voice on a Sunday, for example. You spoke earlier, Kyle, of just like this that piece on our 5-year plan of like diverse voices every Sunday. One of the things that we've talked about a lot already since the pandemic began is we've shifted to a more conversational approach to discussions and to messages. I was talking with somebody who has been newer to the church since the pandemic began the other week, and she was saying to me, she said, I'm not sure I can ever go back to sermons after having this experience of like conversational church, and that's how we kind of get things going, and I can connect with that. You know what I mean? I think that there are a place for more traditional public speaking, and certainly that may still be have a role in our church, but for this season, this has felt like the right thing, and I do think that it's allowed us to hear more diverse voices, because what we're experiencing on Sunday is a bit more like a podcast conversation than like I have a 5-point message that I've prepared and written very carefully, and I have to feel like I'm totally on top of it or else I'm not comfortable to share. What we've had instead is people who maybe would turn us down if we asked them to write that 5-point sermon, who have said, you know what, actually, like I do have something to say on this, and I do have something to offer, and we get to hear those voices then, because those voices do exist in our community, and those voices do exist in our wider networks. And getting to do that, I think, has just allowed us to talk about different things. It's allowed us to be more courageous, I think, in what we end up bringing up for conversation as a church. And I think it's allowed us all to be a bit more vulnerable, because when you take courage to talk about things that you maybe don't feel ready to talk about, we fumble into things, and that can be messy, and that can be scary, and it can be unexpected, and it can take you down roads that you didn't think you were ready for. But it also ends up being where I think we find God. It also ends up being the place where we all grow, because we discover that maybe we had more capacity than we thought we did. It means that we're hearing new things, and we're discovering new ways that, like, oh, God is actually alive over here in this place in our community, or God is actually doing something big along these lines, and we were never talking about it before because we were scared to go there. And I think that's changing. I think that has shifted over the course of the last year since we like made this a document. We're like, we want to stick to this. We want to stick to this as a 5-year plan.
Yeah, and it's something we're going to have to grow in an in-person space as well. Is we have 3 pastoral voices right now that are they're all white, and that's true. And we need to own that, and own the ways that is going to miss things. And so inviting in voices, non-white voices into our conversation is a necessity for us to be able to see and hear and understand the depth of who God is and how he plays out for us. But it's a much different ask to ask somebody jump into a Zoom call to have a conversation with you than it is to be in person, stand up in front of people and do things. And that's something we're going to have to keep being creative and thinking how we make sure that in-person experience doesn't end up being just more time for white voices speaking more, that we can keep that commitment in an in-person space as well, which is something I think that we just need to keep growing into as long as our current pastoral makeup is the way it is. So,
well, also responding to Brittany's question about things we want to work on moving forward, maybe we'll bring it to the last conversation that we thought we could have in sort of a general way, Kyle. We've been having very big thoughts about like why does a church like ours exist? What's the reason for why we're here? What do we see as the unique problem we're addressing in the world? And one of the things that has gotten us talking is an experience that I have, and I wonder if most of you probably have too. If you ask somebody in your life, how are you really? And you have that chance to get a little bit of a conversation going about how the person's really doing. My experience, and I'm guessing a lot of yours, is that everybody responds, I'm tired. I'm really tired. I'm feeling really exhausted. I'm overly busy. I'm feeling a little bit overwhelmed. There's some level of just like being burdened and being like carrying the weight of the world on our shoulders that, to me, it just feels like every single person I talk to experiences. And that is really informative, and we've wanted to kind of zoom in on, like, I think that it's a very real thing when burnout is the biggest threat to every person we know. And it's also a very real thing that when, like, most of the time when that's talked about, even by, like, really, I don't know, really, like, think of the most helpful, like, you know, writer or author or poster on Instagram that you know, like, they say awesome things, but every one of the ways that I interact with, like, how do we address this idea that we're all exhausted all the time, it still comes down to suggestions of ways that I can better care for myself, or suggestions of ways that I can better say no to things, or suggestions of ways, fill in the blank. And when we are left with more suggestions of things, we still, after the fact, end up feeling exhausted because there's more burdens laid on our shoulders. And that's not always the way that we experience, you know, getting good advice. Obviously, you know, I'm all for good advice, and I do think there are things that we can each generally do. But what I think that we've started talking about as a church is, what if burnout is not a problem with each individual? It can't be, right? Because everybody's experiencing it. It's threatening every single person. So it can't just be a problem with you and a problem with me and a problem with the person next to us and the problem with the person next to them. What if it's actually a society level problem? What if burnout is happening at, like, a much bigger level, and it's not really, like, it's not enough to just say, oh, each of us need to battle burnout more courageously. Like, we need to fight burnout at a societal level. And we think that community, particularly centered around Jesus, who's, like, one of his mission statements is, come to me, all you who are weary and heavy laden. My yoke is easy, my burden is light. We really think that, like, Jesus-shaped community, one of the big reasons we exist at all in today's world is to battle burnout at a societal level, not just help people battle it at an individual level. We do have to do that too. But I actually think that everybody is doing their damnedest to try to fight this, and it's still there. It's still exhausting us constantly. How do we fight this at a bigger level than just each individual? How does a community truly come against and fight burnout? So that's something that I feel really charged about. And that's, like, really big picture. So, like, how that actually happens for, like what does a church actually do? I don't know. I want to hear your thoughts on that, but I feel really passionate about this.
Yeah, and I think part of the questions we ask is that we exist in a society where even the way the church has fallen into normative expectations is still like, let's add more things onto your plate. So what is spiritual helpfulness? It is now you are attending something every Sunday, hopefully attending something every Wednesday. You take the practices that are suggested on Sunday, and in theory, if there's a new practice suggested 52 weeks a year, so you are now trying to...
You have 52 practices now.
52 practices in a week. And I think that this is a fundamental flaw for the way that church operates that we have fallen into as well, which is, I don't know if addition is really the thing that we're all needing right now. And so what does that mean for us as a church? What does that mean for us to acknowledge that we ourselves as a community are likely to fall into the same trends and the same systemic realities that our society is built on, which is adding more things and accelerating how fast we're doing things. And right now, I think that there's ways that a community can be really helpful and supportive in giving us space, fighting against burnout. Then I also think there's a lot of risks that the communities have where they just are adding to burnout. And I think we're asking these questions about in-person services and all of the volunteer asks we're making. And I think volunteerism is super important. I think it leads us into deeper and full life. But when does volunteerism just become another thing that you're carrying as a burden? I think that showing up to a Sunday service every week and building in that weekly routine of a pre-decision to be there and that kind of sacred space it becomes is a really helpful thing. But then when's the reality that having to meet another commitment on another day of the week, every week. Questions we would just want to be self-critical about and honest about, and rather than just do things because that's how quote unquote churches have done things, or do things because my capitalist mindset is saying the thing that's going to fix it for you is to add something in and do it faster. I think we want to take this space of stepping back into physical church more, stepping back into this fall more, to ask questions of, why are we doing this? Is this really serving our church, or is this just meeting some expectation that we think we should be doing that is actually just adding to the burnout expectation of folks in our community? And so that's part of, I think, the questions we will be asking together, rather than necessarily just jumping back into the status quo of this is what in-person church looks like, whenever that does become a more regular experience for us.
Yeah, in one sense, it's sort of an encouragement to continue to take this. We're in this difficult, frustrating time, and yet we have found a way to learn things in the midst of that difficult, frustrating time that do impact us and are changing us in good ways, and I think are growing us and are pushing us more toward the values that we want to live out as a community, and so. We're sort of wanting to stay in that experimental phase as we think about this big things of what does it mean when everyone is vying for your space, every good thing in your life, whether it's like the amazing brunch place down the street, or the subscription that you just started at the new gym, or the app that is helping you to do this like stick to your guns on terms of meditating more often, or losing weight, or whatever it is, or the amazing YouTuber that has just like incredible ideas and they're really helping you, or the course that you're taking, because Harvard released all of their courses about happiness and you can take those for like $1 right now, and whatever it is, all of these things that we're all taking, they're all competing for our time in a way. And what we want our church to be able to do is to not play the competition game. How does the church come in and just say wow, like there are so many things out there that, and some of them are really negative, but some of them are awesome. How can we oh my gosh, you found an awesome thing. Let's fan the flame of that. Oh my goodness, you're feeling overburdened by all of these demands and asks on you. This is a place where you can find rest. You're in a space where you are. You're looking for other people to commiserate with in that sense of burnout, but you're not looking for more responsibilities, or another commitment that you have to show up to, or another slice of your week that you have to set aside for something because you're already as busy as can be with work and with your kids and with your family and all of those things. How can the church go to where you are and not just present another thing that you have to go to? These are really, really big questions, and and there are not easy answers to these things. But we wanted to bring that up as a topic of conversation today because we think it's really important, and we think that if we just kind of go with the flow and allow the status quo to just lead us back into as the world continues to open and we eventually end up with with returning to hybrid services every week, and that's like just way we go. If we're not thoughtful about but wait. How can we take this time and really get experimental and think, are we really addressing the problems that most of us face every day? And that's why I bring it back to this idea of every one of the people that I talk to is tired and exhausted and overburdened all the time. How do we address that? That is something that is beating us down, that is holding us back from engaging the things that grab our passions. That's making it feel hard to feel alive at the end of the day, where all we can end up doing is shutting down and turning on something to watch. And there are great things to watch out there, but sometimes you can tell when your soul is deadened inside, and we want to address that. We think that is our call as a Jesus community, to look around and say, anybody who is weary, burdened, heavy laden, can we find an easier yoke? Can we find a lighter burden in this God who claims to care about that so much? I think we can, and our church wants to be positioned at that crossroads.
Well, we thank you everybody for just joining in this family conversation and trying to take this moment to reflect on where we've been this last year, reflect on what's moving forward right now. We want to keep inviting space for feedback, whether it's through that survey or through reaching out to us. This isn't our only opportunity to have discussions, but it did feel important to take this space to do that. So I just appreciate all of the comments. Some of the comments we haven't had time to get to, but we still do appreciate all that people have added into. So I wonder, Vince, would you pray for us here, and then we'll move on to closing up our time together.
That's great. Yes. Well, as usual, we like to close in our space of communion, and even as I think about what we're talking about right now, of is there a space in my life that I can come back to and not have to perform for others, not have to earn anything, and not have to garner for the approval of those people around me? Is there a space, is there a community where I can come as I am, be accepted, and look at the people across the table and accept them for doing the same? And in many ways, when we take communion, this is what we are ritualizing. We are imagining ourselves sort of in a big meal, and we are sitting around the same table, accepting one another, accepting what each is bringing to the table in terms of what they see that I don't see, and also in terms of accepting one another because we are each bringing things that we regret and that we are not proud of. And then when we enter into that space with God, the God who is familiar with all of the stresses and the burdens and the sufferings that we carry, as we began our service meditating on this morning, this God walks through every bit of that hardship, never runs away, never tries to escape from those realities, but holds us fast, cares for us in the meantime, gives us an easy yoke so that we are not burdened beyond ability to fight through those things on our own. Rather, we have the help of this God who knows and empathizes, and we have the help of those people who are at the table with us. So we will take a meal in a virtual space together, imagining ourselves around one large table. And we imagine Jesus there with us, who on the night he was betrayed, broke bread, shared it with his friends, and said, "Eat this, and when you do so in remembrance of me," the God of empathy. And likewise, he took a cup and he shared it with his friends, and he said, "Drink this, and when you do so in remembrance of me," who went to the fullest extent to show his empathy with us. And Jesus, we do. We imagine ourselves in that feast together with these people in our community, and well beyond these people in our community. All those that are seeking the goodwill of others and the goodwill of ourselves caught up together, that we are not isolated individuals, that we are not alone in trying to figure out our lives, and we are not alone in facing the greatest hurts and pains that life brings to us. You, God, are the God that knows what it is like to feel pain. You're a God that knows what it's like to sit at a table and serve someone and then be betrayed by that person. You are a God that knows what it is like to be afraid. You are a God that knows what it's like to be misunderstood. And you are a God that knows what it feels like when all of us feel threatened by burnout constantly. And we ask that you would give us the food and the drink we need to face those things courageously, to remind us that we are not alone, And we ask that you would teach us to be a communal activity, a communal presence in our areas, in our neighborhoods, that fights that exhaustion, that steals life from individuals, that stops justice from being done. And that allows the status quo to just run rampant while people slowly die inside. We want to fight that and teach us how to do that as a community. In your name, Jesus, we pray. Amen.
Thank you so much for joining us here today. We'll be back online next week, and then we'll be in person the following week. Have our in-person option as a hybrid service on the 12th. If the Bible group is after church today, so anybody that wants to stick around for that, we'll be diving into Luke 12. But for everyone else, have a wonderful rest of your Sunday on this last Sunday in August, and good luck to all those families that are kicking off school this week.
Bye, everyone.